Imagine walking through the basement of a museum, surrounded by shelves stacked with dusty relics. Most objects are familiar: bowls, tools, clay pots, but one jar stands out. Inside this simple vessel lies copper, iron, and traces of bitumen, sealed together in a way that makes no sense, until someone suggests the unthinkable. This might be the world's first battery. This is the story of the Baghdad Battery, an ancient artifact that has baffled scientists, historians, and archaeologists for nearly a century. Was it truly a device that produced electricity nearly 2,000 years ago? Or simply a misunderstood jar with no connection to power at all? The Baghdad Battery was discovered in the 1930s during an excavation at Kujut Rabu near Baghdad. At first glance, it appeared to be a plain clay jar, only about 13 centimeters tall. But inside was a copper cylinder, sealed with asphalt, and within that, an iron rod. It was German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig who first examined it in 1938. To him, the arrangement of copper and iron immediately suggested something more than mere storage. It looked like the components of an electrochemical cell. And if true, this would push back the history of electricity by almost 2 millennia. Koenig proposed that the jar could generate electricity if filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar, lemon juice, or even grape juice. Replicas tested in modern times have proven that the design does, in fact, produce a small electric charge, about half a volt to 1 volt. Not much by modern standards, but multiple jars could theoretically be strung together to produce more power. This sparked speculation. Could ancient peoples have used this device for electroplating, coating objects with thin layers of precious metals? Or perhaps for ritual shocks, producing mysterious tingling sensations that priests could pass off as divine energy? The possibility that an ancient civilization experimented with electricity is thrilling and controversial. To understand the context, we need to step back into the Parthian period, around 250 BC to 225 AD. The Parthians ruled a vast empire stretching across Persia and Mesopotamia. They were skilled in metallurgy, trade, and craftsmanship. This was a culture of innovation: advanced irrigation systems, astronomical observations, and sophisticated glasswork. The Parthians were not strangers to experimentation. Even if they didn't understand electricity as we do, they certainly had the technical ability to create something unusual. At the same time, Mesopotamia had a long tradition of alchemy, early chemistry. People sought ways to transform metals, preserve substances, and manipulate the natural world. Could the Baghdad Battery have been one of their tools? Of course, not everyone is convinced. Many archaeologists reject the battery interpretation outright. They point out that no wires, no conductive traces, and no written records have been found to suggest the Parthians knew of electricity. A single jar producing less than a volt of power doesn't prove practical use. And without evidence of multiple jars being linked together, large-scale applications seem unlikely. Some argue instead that the jars were used for storage, perhaps to hold sacred texts or scrolls. Others believe the copper and iron were ritual components, not scientific ones. To skeptics, the Baghdad Battery is simply an ancient container, misinterpreted through the lens of modern science. But the experiments are hard to ignore. In the 1970s, the Smithsonian Institution built replicas of the Baghdad Battery. When filled with vinegar, they produced enough current to electroplate small objects with silver. Other researchers have repeated these tests with similar results. Was this deliberate or a coincidence? It's impossible to know for certain, but even the faintest spark from the jar raises questions. Did ancient people stumble upon this effect by accident? Did they understand its potential? Or was it used in ways that left no written record? Some have suggested the jars could have been used in healing practices, primitive electrotherapy. Others imagine them being used in temples, where a hidden charge could shock or tingle in rituals, convincing worshippers that divine power was present. This is where the Baghdad Battery crosses from archaeology into legend. In popular culture, it has been linked to lost technologies and even pseudoscientific theories about ancient aliens. While most scholars dismiss these ideas, the fact that such an object exists, strange, unexplained, and unique, makes it irresistible to speculation. What we do know is that ancient people were far from ignorant. They were inventive, curious, and often experimental. They may not have had the theory of electricity, but they understood practical results when they saw them. the Baghdad Battery could have been a piece of that trial-and-error experimentation. Whether the Baghdad Battery was truly a battery or not, it forces us to question how much we really know about the past. It shows us that sometimes the most ordinary-looking artifact can spark extraordinary debate. That knowledge can be lost, rediscovered, or misinterpreted, and that ancient civilizations may have been experimenting with technologies we assume belong only to the modern age. Even if the jar was not an electrical device, it has become a symbol of curiosity, of possibility, and of the mysteries still buried in our history. The Baghdad Battery remains one of archaeology's great enigmas. A clay jar, copper, and iron. Simple materials, yet capable of igniting one of the most fascinating debates in the study of ancient technology. Was it truly the world's first battery, or just a misunderstood relic? Perhaps we'll never know for sure. But maybe that's the beauty of history. The questions it raises are just as important as the answers. The Baghdad Battery may never tell us all its secrets, but it reminds us that the past is not as distant or as simple as we think. If you enjoyed this journey into hidden history, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the MindSpark Archive. Tell us in the comments, what do you believe? Ancient electricity or an ancient mystery?